And then the role of the organization becomes one about vocation. It's not a family, but I lost money on equities. Equities can be quite risky, more risky than you think. The thing is though, people think that everyone has seen that point. Like say the genocide that's happening in Gaza at the moment, it's like not everyone sees the full picture. And I think that's the role of a journalist now, to make sense of all the online clutter, all the noise and all the opinions, and put together our story in a way that makes sense. This idea that if you escape the 9 to 5, that suddenly you're going to be a crypto bro with millions of dollars and you're going to blow up as an influencer is a silly concept.
Hey guys, don't you think university is all about having fun? But if you're going to spend all your money on tuition fees, you're not going to have any money to have some fun. Do you want a boring university life? I don't think so. So you go to bit.ly slash pay less fees. Bit.ly slash pay less fees. Secure my bit.ly slash pay less fees. Okay. So head down to bit.ly slash pay less fees. Our sponsor, Secure My Scholarship, will give you up to 50% in scholarships in universities in UK, US, and UAE.
Welcome back to Dollar Diaries. Today we have Richard Fitzgerald with us, who is the CEO and founder of Augustus Media. A quite interesting guest because I'm sure you might know him from Lovin Dubai.
Also, a huge thanks to Horizontal for being our venue sponsor for today.
We had a lovely conversation about the media landscape here in the region, owning a business versus 9 to 5, and of course, personal finances and a few tips and tricks, which I think are going to be quite useful to you.
So why don't you just tell us something about your journey? Just a little bit of the journey, how basically what got you started, what was that spark where you thought that, okay, I want to start Lovin Dubai here?
I was young, I was a professional like you guys.
Yeah.
I was working in digital advertising. As the years went on, I wanted to have my own thing, not necessarily my own thing. I also was always entrepreneurial within social media agencies and digital agencies. But the Lovin Dubai was a bit of a spark. It was something that I thought this could work and I got excited about it. And when we launched it, it did have that initial traction. I didn't go in on it full time at the start, but it had that buzz about it. It was at the time where Facebook and new media websites were going up on Facebook. And if you published faster in a clickbaity way, you get a lot of page views. And I was quite hooked on that. And I thought like, this is a great way to build a brand and build traffic and tell the story of a city. The thing that worked about Lovin Dubai was the digital part, but also bringing the different communities together in Dubai to giving them the same place to talk about and comments and community stories. And those sort of things like came together, we don't overthink it. We just keep going.
Right. I think that is something that makes Lovin Dubai so different from the others. It's that informality in the content. It's something that you don't need to like. It's not so technical, and it's something that's very engaging. So I remember one podcast I had seen, and you had mentioned that anyone new to Dubai, Lovin Dubai is like one of the first few accounts that they follow on Instagram. How did you manage to build that status, that kind of trust amongst your audience?
And I know there's a lot of people who grew up here, all different nationalities, and even people who work with us, they need to know the city. They need to love the city. It's almost like a default, like you have to be passionate about it. You have to defend it. You have to sort of be proud of where you're from and the life that you want to live here and everything like that. And I think there's a little bit of passion there. It's in the name. But then at the same point, when people move here, I remember sitting in an agency in London in 2012, looking up things about Dubai. Like there was 2 books I brought it with me, Islam for Dummies and the first 100 days in the workplace. But everything else online, there was some expat HSBC websites, but there was very little information. And what we get told a lot is that, people are told which app to download when they arrive and which page to follow. And Lovin Dubai always gets mentioned. And we take pride in that, but we don't necessarily do it just to help people with all that information. We're not supposed to the 10 things that you need to do when you arrive. Okay, we do have some lists, but it's more important for us to recognize the people who live here. And you'll see how we, we talk in a very relatable way. Our headlines aren't like newspapers. They're very much like how we talk to each other.
Right.
And that's intentional. And we use like acronyms, like we don't explain MOE, like we don't explain things. We don't explain who the influencers are or who the local celebrities are. And that's what being part and embracing a city is. And the more that people embrace the city, more that people love the city that they're in, the happier they can be,
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with you. So I came to Dubai with my family when I was like 2 years old. And this has been home for me, right? Like even when I go back to India, if it's like for a holiday, it feels like I'm a tourist in that country and this is home. Like this is where I'm from. One thing about being in Dubai, because it's like so mixed, like with the cultures and everything, and you're so exposed to different cultures, right? You never feel like you're away from your country.
That's true.
Because anywhere you go, you'll meet someone from the country that you're from.
That's so true. Like, Liz, I tell you something. We worked with the media office one year, and they recognized this. They called it a melting pot.
Moving from your country to here, how is it different in terms of the media landscape?
Yeah, I think I remember telling my boss in London, and he said, "Why are you moving to a city of 2 million people? Why don't you go somewhere else?" And when I landed, my network agency, they had set up about 15 years before, and they had offices in 12, 13 countries across the region. And that was my remit. So the first 3 years, my head wasn't fully in Dubai. I was often in Beirut. I was in North Africa. I was in Iraq. I was in Saudi a lot. And I was building this social media department, hired 30 trilingual graduates in Lebanon. We really built up a department. I was so engrossed with the region that I had to embrace the culture. I had to figure things out. I had to sort of commit to it. And I have more and more over the years. Things are definitely different in media landscape. I didn't study journalism. I studied economics and German. But the year that I spent in Germany and the language I learned, I think it helped me to know how to embrace a new country or region. And it's not necessarily just about the language. Now I watch all the Ramadan. Well, I watch as many as I can. They're often long, these 30 episodes, and they kind of make them up as they go along. But but I watch a lot of these dramas. I watch a lot of this stuff. And I consume a lot of culture as much as I can. And so but going back sort of 12 years ago, I think it was just an evolution. Everyone has different stories of how they end up staying longer here and why, and where their families are and who their partners are, and many things like that. But in terms of business and media, the media is different. Ireland itself is very fishbowly, where I'm from. If the national media are talking about something, the whole country knows about it. And Ireland is very homogeneous, a very kind of one religion, one sort of national. Everyone knows the musicians, the teams, and the people, right? Whereas England and the sort of Western media have a guideline around media. And often, if you think of the US Constitution, if you think of when that was at the end of the 18th century, and you think of how media evolved since then, the first newspapers in the US are about 1850. And then the more famous newspaper proprietors are about 1890, like William Randolph Hearst. And then you go into the next century, you have Walt Disney, you have TV, you have more radio, and you have all these different mediums. And a lot of the Western world, does stem from that First Amendment, which is a constitution for a country, relatively small populace, if you think about it, a couple of 100 million versus 8 billion. To think that constitution that wasn't written for media dictates the media landscape around the world, for me, doesn't really fit. So I really like that we're part of this new region in terms of media, and that, the region here does respect Islam and the Prophet, peace be upon him, and the leadership, and everyone's right to sort of earn a living and not sort of be critical for the sake of being critical. So I really like that, that I've approached it from the outside. I'm not from a journalism background, but I'm trying to build, our mission is to build a modern media company of choice in the Middle East and North Africa. And that's what we're aiming to do. So the more that we embrace the region and the different nuances, and also the biggest part of media today is the changing media, is what we're doing now, is podcasting and TikTok and vertical video and AI and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, there's definitely difference in media. But just like in any country that you've experienced, every media is different everywhere. But just because it's not the same as where the famous medias are from, doesn't mean that it doesn't have to be a valuable part of business, culture, society in its own right.
It's a known fact that there's a shift in the type of media platforms, right? I mean, print and television, it's not that popular now, right? People look at the internet for their news. But do you feel that there is a difference in the way people consume information? So, for example, my dad, he wakes up every morning and he's very old school. Okay, so he will read the newspaper. He devotes a little while to watch the news, whatever, CNN, BBC. And I mean, I also like to stay up to date with the current affairs. But for me, I get my information from the net, from Instagram and other kind of platforms. But if you speak to him, the way he knows information is so detailed versus me. Because for me, it's more, I know kind of the surface level of it. So do you feel like because there's a shift, there's also a difference in the way people know information, the way people consume it?
I think, you know, in generations, like we think, are we all going to move to a different form of content now with AI? But I think our generation are particularly attached and ingrained with the mobile device. Yeah. It'll take us a long time to wean off that and off the social media. Like, you know, I think of my mum, if she went to a house or if she went somewhere, she would look around and where the TV is. But if we're missing our mobile phones for 15 minutes, anxiety sets in because we need our phones, because that's our TV, that's our newspaper. And I think that's important as a human behavior in terms of what the TV did for that generation. The mobile is doing it for us. In terms of the surface level, I'd have to think about it. I think it's an interesting observation you made. But on one level, I do think new media allows you to go a lot deeper than old media. Yeah. Old media, the newspaper and the TV was very programmed, in a linear way. What they decide is the opinion piece and the editorial. And what they decide goes on the TV to shape a nation's view or whatever is very much there. But now, if I'm passionate about something, you know, on the way in the car, actually my brother called, but usually I'm listening to a podcast and I will go deep. I will go really, really deep. There's certain topics that I like and I will listen to the same podcast every week on media, but then I will search for a name that I like and it'll show up a random podcast just like this. If someone searches someone's name, they would bring up this podcast. If you interview them, you know, if they interview Dubai Media. So I happened to be listening to a podcast about the founder of BuzzFeed by two young girls in somewhere in the US. I'd never listened to it again, but because they dedicated that episode to that. So I do think you can go really deep. And also the way the algorithms work, people say it's, what's the word that they use? But they say echo chamber, and that the algorithms only reinforce your opinion. But actually, they do allow you to go really deep. Like if you think of the way the Instagram algorithm is changing now, like TikTok, it's serving you stuff up that you've shown interest in before. And that's good and bad. It's good that you're getting more and more of the stuff that you like, but it's bad because it's just reinforcing the same views that you had. You know, if I'm reinforcing and building knowledge about football or cricket or food or movies or whatever, then the more and more content I get on that, old media did that as well. And now new media, and like before, like if you're growing up and you love a certain topic and you see they made one program about it, you'd be like, I want more of that. Give me more. And now you can get more, but you find it in all different ways. And I think that's interesting in itself.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right, because before with TV, with print, you had only a certain set of information and it was so confined, right? Well, as now, like you mentioned with the algorithms, you have a variety of different sources that you can attain your information from. And it's interesting because you get perspectives from different people, right? It's not just one person reporting one thing. It's a dozen people reporting one thing.
The thing is, though, people think that everyone has seen that point. Like, say, the genocide that's happening in Gaza at the moment, it's like not everyone sees the full picture. Right. So, like I always tell the guys, the people on our team, when something big is happening, an event, old media would go down and vox pop outside the stadium, and they'd only capture one view, and they're one person's view. But if there's 40,000 mobile phones, then if you do a really good job at searching Instagram places or Snapchat red heat map, you can pick out so much more more views. It's like, that word that they use often in the art world of curating and telling a story. If Picasso does 1,000 paintings or many more over 80 years, how do you tell a story? And I think that's the role of a journalist now, to make sense of all the online clutter, all the noise and all the opinions, and put together a picture or a story in a way that makes sense, in a way that sums up what's going on under a specific media lens. And so that's a lot of what we do. Like, there is a lot of stuff out there, but you might say to someone, oh, did you see that? And they go, no, I saw this, or I heard this, or I saw that. Did you see this video? No. Oh, how couldn't you? I saw it had lots of views. Yeah, but what about this? And then there's a really good app at the moment. It's an AI app. It's called Perplexity. And you can type in, tell me a little bit about the event that happened in, say, the Indian. I read an article this morning in the FT about that happened this week. And now that's my view. That's my view. And I think that's the only view out there, because that's the article that I read. But actually, there's loads of more tweets. There's loads more views. There's loads more nuances. And I could go a lot deeper on that. And if I typed in, hey, Perplexity, tell me a little bit about the Indian elections. What they do is they crawl all the reputable websites and they give me back. So they kind of steal all the articles from all the big newspapers and they give me a summary of what are the key points. What do I need to know about this? So the AI is doing a lot of this curation.
That's extremely interesting, really. I'm like, I want to know the name. That's the first thing that I'm going to do once this podcast is done. I'm like, I really want to know more about this.
It's fascinating. I mean, watching the AI technology change right now, disrupt, is fascinating. How we can approach it. Like at the moment, you can look at it in different ways, but it's such a catch-all term. For some people, AI is robots. For other people, it's doing captions over this video, these podcasts. For other people, it's replacing this podcast. For other people, it's subtitles, or it's doing cuts. So you feed in this 50 minutes and it gives you out the interesting pieces. There's loads of things. Like the generative AI aspect of content and AI is really interesting. I think we just have to embrace it, though.
Yeah, I think AI gets a lot of heat from people, because I don't really know. But like you said, like if you use it in the right sense to your advantage as an asset, then why not, right? It makes life easier.
I think just adding on to that, I would say when ChatGPT or Gemini became extremely popular here, a lot of people thought, we're going to lose our job because of this. We won't be writing articles anymore because they're just doing the job for us. So I think because of that, there was a lot of heat and a lot of people were not ready to embrace it. But from my experience, looking at the content that ChatGPT or Gemini gives, I'm like, you still need human over there. They really cannot do your job. They can help you, but they can't really take over your job as of now.
And what you said, Parker, right now is that Ted Sarandos, the co-CEO of Netflix, said AI won't take your job, but the person who uses AI will take your job. And I think everyone's realizing that now. We have a lot of young journalists in the team thinking, but it's true. Like way back in 2015, when we were trying to do text overlay video and video on Lovin Dubai, we would have had to hire lots of videographers and editors. We have some, but we we have more journalists, and it's that capacity to think and that journalistic brain is more important for our business. We do a load of video, but we don't have many video editors. We'll do a load more now with AI. It's just going to increase the amount of content we do. But having that capacity to think and to tell a story is so, so important. And it's only more people we'll hire because we will pump out more video and more audio and more articles and more newsletters using AI. And luckily, our head of content, Asima, gets this and is embracing it. And, she's got 18 years experience. You don't have to be young and new to know that this is going to be important.
Yeah. I think your mindset is really important, right? Like age doesn't matter. If you know what you can use as a tool, if you have that mindset, looking at everything as an asset, then why not, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. But you are someone who has seen both sides of the coin, right? You've had your 9 to 5 and you've started a business. So what is your take on the whole 9 to 5 versus having your own business debate? Because it is a big debate in our generation, at least.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. interesting question.
Yeah.
For me, it was never a 9 to 5. I'll tell you that.
Oh.
You know, the agencies I worked in Dublin and London, it definitely wasn't a 9 to 5. It was almost like the banking sector. It was like, it was 10 o'clock at night. Like it was full on. Even in Mindshare here, I remember once there was a month I came back, I was working in Beirut a lot. And I think it was a leap year. I worked 28 out of 29 days. I would always come in, and the weekends were different then. I used to work on Fridays to catch Beirut when our weekend was Friday and Saturday. Our week was Sunday. And I used to work on Fridays to catch Beirut. And now I work every Sunday. So I will go into the office tomorrow and I will work the full day because I have offices in Qatar, Egypt, and Saudi. And I will speak to the 50 people that are working there. And it's a 6-day week for me. And I don't consider myself that I have my own agency company. I consider myself an employee. So I have the same mindset I had then. You know, in the Dublin and London years, I was very underpaid. But in hindsight, they were the best years. I worked so hard. I got so stressed. I had so many arguments, but I learned so much. And I threw everything into it and it paid off. And that knowledge compounds. Going back to talk about the books, those books were important then. But now I recently converted to Islam and now I have a Quran in English by my desk. And, you know, that knowledge is compounding and that approach to learning is always there. It's an open mindset. It allows me to learn more. I listened to audiobooks on the bike this morning. It's that knowledge. And the same with work. It's just a mindset. It's just an approach. So when young people are talking about this idea of like 9 to 5 versus, and this word that creeps in podcasts, corporate versus not, what is this language? A job's a job, earn a living. Stop with this silly stuff. Stop with this corporate versus, you're painting a picture that isn't true. A work is work. Sure, you work remotely, whatever, do what you want. But this idea that if you escape the 9 to 5, that suddenly you're going to be a crypto bro with millions of dollars and you're going to blow up as an influencer is a silly concept. It's not true. Like, it's just silly. Like, it's on the face of it, it's not true. You can not be corporate 9 to 5 and still be corporate 9 to 5. It's just the corporation is you. Your personal economy, the job is you. But you need discipline. You need to have that attitude. You know, it's really important for young people to get this, you know, because you won't get anywhere. You won't get anywhere. You know, I prefer to have this approach of like compounding and building and you know how we approach that. But I never saw it as, I see myself as an employee now. It was never to escape anything. But I will say that running your own business and doing your own thing has unbelievable freedoms. Unbelievable freedom to be strategic. It's more important to me that to have the freedom to make decisions. You know, I'm a little bit older than you guys. Like for me, I need to understand that mindset. I need to understand that 9 to 5 to the whatever. And I do think that the people coming into our company now are different than 20 years ago. And technology has changed. The pandemic changed how people perceive work and things like that. But on the face of it, I don't think things have changed too much. I think we're still in the Industrial Revolution. I think we still have offices. We still have the concept of work and earning an income and having a salary. And I think those things still exist. When we set up Augustus Media, it was a new media company. And some people said to me, hey, Rich, why don't we have bean bags and Google stuff? And I said, you know, because we're a new media company, meaning like we will do media in the digital world. Just like if you set a law firm today and you focus on cyber security, you can still have an office, you can still hire a lawyer, you can still charge by the hour, just like old law firms did 40 years ago. And that's how we view media. We want to be in digital, but we still want people to have the freedom to have a work-life balance, to leave the office at 6 o'clock as they do, and not to, you know, we don't communicate on WhatsApp over the weekend, you know, wellness and taking away the stress of the environment, even out of working hours. We keep everything on work channels. I don't believe in this sort of, idea. I don't want our employees to feel stressed because I felt it. I don't want that environment. So all that sort of plays into it. And then the role of the organization becomes one about vocation, not life. It's not a family. You're not joining a family. One guy resigned this week and I love him to bits. And it was the best thing to do for him and his family right now. I don't want him to leave, but our relationship in the 6 years that we had together has been incredible. I can't ask for more than that. I'm not going to fall out with him. It's not a family, you know, and he needs to do what's right for him and he's doing what's right for him. and it's a fair, amicable departure, you know. And so I think you need to have that healthy relationship with work and with where you work. But I would sort of encourage people to do their own thing, provided they realize that it's a business and you're an employee. You employ yourself, but you're an employee, and you have to work just as hard as anyone who achieved it in any organization.
Do you think, with the new generation coming in, there is a struggle when it comes to just, having a place for them or just fitting them in? Because not a lot of us, but a lot of the younger generation, they come in with this idea that I'm only going to work 9 to 5. How do they contact me at 1:05? I feel like there's a lack of initiative from our side. Is that a thought that's there from somebody who's senior? What kind of struggle have you faced when it comes to integrating somebody that's new and young into Lovin Dubai?
Look, this 9 to 5 thing for me is always like, if I'm paid, if I check in and check out, if I'm working in a restaurant, I get it. But if I'm in the intellectual services industry, like marketing, clients are usually 9 to 6, 9 to 5 people. So they don't actually, as much as customers, they don't actually contact you as much as you think they do. But mostly I would put it on you. I would say, have you really communicated? Have you handed over every day? When we hand over on leave, people send a leave document and go, I've handed over. Did you have a meeting? Did you tell everyone everything so that they have no reason to contact you? Do you manage upwards? And that's what a career is. So are you managing upwards to a client every day before you leave? If they contact you, it's because they needed something that you didn't do in the 8 hours that you were at work. That's why they're contacting you. And also, not to put it all on you, but on the person, but if they're contacting and because they're needy and they think things are more important than they are, then you haven't set boundaries and you haven't communicated effectively, But it's not just on the young person. The organization needs a culture to set this in as well. If you have a mindset that I'm out the door at 5:00, watch where your career here is in 10 years. If you have the mindset of I'm out the door at 5:00, but I'm going to make sure everything's perfect, then that puts extra pressure on you to deliver while you're there. And then that's learning how to manage upwards, and that's communication and stuff like that.
I see a lot of ads, but there's very little information, especially when I started out. I'm like, I don't know where to invest. I don't know where to start. And then eventually I'm like, I stuck with national bonds because I'm like, that is the safest. And that's the safest route to go. I don't want to go with banks because I've absolutely no idea what they're doing. And I think even when it comes out with them giving out information, it's very vague. It's just top line. And they're like,
yeah.
Okay.
That's a good point, Barker. I think to build on what you were saying, the idea is money management, right? And, saving from a young age or at any age. And we can read many books around it. We can talk about investment and compounding and stuff like that. But I think the way that I learned about it, I wasn't good. When I moved here when I was 29 going on 30, and when I started my own business when I was 32, I didn't have any savings per se. I had gratuity. I put 20 grand into the business, but it was only then when I started the mindset about knowledge compounding and reading and listening to audiobooks. I then listened to all the books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Tony Robbins books, the all weather, 4 seasons type of investing from Ray Dalio, all these different books. I have a little pamphlet book by what's his name? I see him. He was here, not Gary Vaynerchuk, but another guy about money management. What I realized on money management is asset allocation. And about in 2019, I started a personal balance sheet. I'm not an accountant. I'm not like studying CFAs or anything like that. But I started at the first of the month, every month, I do 2 things. I send a monthly email to the staff, to all the employees. I haven't missed a first of the month, no matter what day of the week it's on or what holiday, in 9 years. I don't miss the first of the month. And I do my balance sheet in the first of the month. And I have a goal that I want to reach in total net worth. So I keep reinvesting. And what I do is each month I look at different things and I moved money here or there, right? So I add up and I look at it. And what I've learned about the Ray Dalio thing is, like you were saying about bonds, bonds are good, and T-bonds, treasury bonds and bonds are good right now because of the high interest rates and inflation. So they'll hold their value. But you can start learning a whole world about bonds that on maturity, they net out at 100, but they're fixed income. So you can't lose per se, right?
Yeah.
But there's fees and stuff a little bit. You have to be a little bit careful, but they're quite safe. And you can have 5, 7. I just got one yesterday at 7% bonds, but they're just the bonds. And then how do you invest in them? I did a lot in equities. There's retail trading apps that got big in the US, Robinhood, but I lost money on equities. Equities can be quite risky, more risky than you think. Now in the UAE, you have Barakat and Sarwa a bit, but you've got others that are in equities. They only do US stocks. Then you need a broker to trade on the UAE markets. You need a broker per se. There's one app that does it. It's BH Mubashir in Abu Dhabi, and it allows you to trade on the ADX and the DFM. There are 3 exchanges in the UAE. Dubai Financial Markets has 2, DFM and Nasdaq Dubai. Now, what's happening in the market right now is there's a loads of IPOs. The UAE have an approach to have 10 companies listing. We're on about 6 or 7, and they're allowing all retail investors as a tranche of about 5 or 10% of the total investment to go in. And what's happening is the banks have the customer details. So you're able to trade on the retail tranche. And then when it goes in, you can't trade because you can't trade through your bank because there's not a trading app plugged into the exchanges. You have to go through a broker. So we're in a weird situation now that it's oversubscribed, the Spinneys IPO or whatever, are oversubscribed by 120 or 130 times. And when it goes public, it doesn't change much. Or a few months later, it's at the same price, but the same demand isn't there because the route to market. And that's changing. The guys with these apps are allowing you to do trading. So now's the time to learn about all these things, to learn about all these apps. The dividends are so attractive here. 70% of profits on utility things like DIWA and electricity and telco bills and all this sort of stuff, and road transport and things like that. Like the dividends are very attractive, and we're allowed by part of this growing fast economy. So I would definitely say, like Warren Buffett said, bet in America. I would say bet in the UAE, not investment advice, bet in the UAE, but like, because I see what's happening. Like in the 90s in Russia, there was a thing called loans for shares. You were able to buy into state assets. And now that's happening in UAE. I fully suspect Emirates to go public. Emirates is one of the best companies in the world. Etihad is going public soon. Having shares in these companies is interesting. It's not the only way, but I invested in startups. I wasted money because it's gone away, but I learned a lot through that. When I was investing in startups, I was sent safe notes and convertible notes. And when I got these documents, I read books around venture deals, and I was able to write back to the thing and ask them to change terms. And I'm not a lawyer, from 30 pages of legal mumbo jumbo just to protect myself, just because I write a book. The knowledge and the satisfaction that comes in that's taking control of my own investments. And when people ring me up, every week we get these calls, or every day we get these calls, and they're like, go into this. I'm able to say, no, thank you. I have about 6 apps and I trade. I have Saxo app in Denmark. I have ETFs there. I have an AI ETF from 4 years ago. I wish I had NVIDIA with the same amount. NVIDIA, brilliant how that company named themselves. You should look it up. But NVIDIA are now past $1 trillion. And like I should, in hindsight, but I don't have FOMO. Why? Because I have an investment strategy. I only invest really in media stocks because I have an expertise in that. My problem is that media stocks are crap. But, I've lost money in Angami and BuzzFeed and stuff like that, but I learn a lot. I get invited to the shareholders' calls. It's fascinating. I voted on a company in the US. I did 30 voting things just because I have a share. You feel really empowered, and you learn about governance, and you can start all that from a young age, and what Warren Buffett, he used to manage his friend's money when he started out. And then he realized that betting on the market isn't the best thing to do. So he started owning companies that pay dividends. And that's where Berkshire Hathaway came about. Berkshire Hathaway was a mattress company or something, but he used it as an investment vehicle. And he buys 5% or 10% of companies that pay dividend. And people say that Warren Buffett missed the tech world. He didn't. The tech world never paid dividends. Only lately, Apple and Facebook, after 15 years, started paying dividends. Apple about 5 or 6 years ago. And lo and behold, under Tim Cook, they pay massive dividends. And now Warren Buffett owns a significant percentage of Apple. He makes most of his money from Coca-Cola dividends and other things like See's Candy and Wells Fargo and American banks and an insurance company, because they pay big dividends. And, his company is worth a lot. That's the beauty of business. You can create your own systems, and if you think of your personal economy, like I think my personal investments will be what I have is Fitzy Fund. So Fitzy Fund is my investment in startups. But I see that as a family office in the future that I will be taxed against, and I will have investments in there to manage these assets. And every month I will manage these assets, but then I don't daily trade. I do it once a month, and I look at it in that way. And I learn all the time. I'm not brilliant, but But the knowledge that I get, the satisfaction I get from being able to ask questions on a startup investment legal document and them being the right questions, and then the satisfaction I get to know what my banks are sending me on what a bond is, and being able to understand maturity and which one to invest in. And then when I see economic data out of Turkey or out of Egypt and knowing, right, we just did a trade in Egypt, GDRs against the currency that worked a lot. To learn about this stuff is really rewarding, you know? So yeah, but I think like it is nerve-wracking. The basic stuff, how I should have answered the question at the start or started the conversation is that like obviously saving, obviously putting 100 dirhams a month. Obviously you need to start somewhere.
But putting the 100 dirhams where?
The Rich Dad Poor Dad, those books is pay yourself first. So just start with, I know with HSBC, now 10 years ago, I didn't have this, just an e-savings account that has no interest. Like just the idea, just the process of putting 100 dirhams into a piggy bank, like literally just putting it somewhere. And if in emergency, you need to spend that money, fine. If you need to spend it, fine. But the better you get at that mental thing of just putting it somewhere. And then at the end of the month of you having 5,000 dirhams and then deciding, okay, I'm going to put that in a 5% return. But you will then decide your risk appetite, not just by doing these studies with the bank and these documents. I don't like that stuff. I don't like these things of putting it, I won't name names, but putting it away for a long time because the fees are too big and you never touch it and it eats up. Yeah. And really you get ruined there. I like being more in control. So I like having access to apps and access to take out and knowing what the fees are. But if I look down on 100%, I might have, you know, roughly like 20% in bonds, 20% in property, 10% in crypto, 10% in equities, and so on and so on, and 20% in startups. So if that's 1,000 dirhams and it's split out like that, fine, you know. And at the end of every month, if one bit is bigger than the other, or if a startup pays off, I then recycle it and put it into these buckets.
Thank you so much, Richard. Yeah. It was absolutely lovely speaking with you, and I love your mindset. And it's also, I think, a moment of realization for me, at least, to look at the picture in a different way, and set in a lot of systems for myself as well, which is what I'm trying to do now. It's struggling a little bit, but I think I'll get there. And thank you for coming on this show. It was absolutely lovely.
Lovely to chat to you today.